Have you already caught yourself saying yes to something just to avoid momentary discomfort? Or maybe you accepted an extra commitment or responsibility because you felt there was no other option. The truth is that many people face this situation, daily accumulating tasks, promises, and obligations that ultimately do not contribute to their personal goals or their happiness. Worst of all, by saying yes repeatedly for fear or guilt, we end up sacrificing our energy, time, and mental well-being. Today we will explore how Stoic wisdom can help us claim our emotional freedom by learning to say no consciously and assertively. This does not mean being selfish. It means living a life more aligned with our values and priorities. Stoic philosophy, developed for over 2 millennia, offers powerful principles that are still incredibly relevant in our modern world. She teaches us how to cultivate self-control, mental clarity, and emotional resilience, essential skills for making wise decisions about what our yes deserves and what should receive a firm no. At the end of this video, you will have practical tools to refuse unnecessary requests without feeling guilty and will gain more time and energy to focus on what really matters. Whether in your career, relationships, or mental health, learning to say no in a balanced way can turn your life from the inside out. So get ready to embark on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Together, let's find out how Old Stoic can be guided towards emotional freedom and inner peace. If you say no, it seems so simple in theory. Why in practice do we find so many difficulties to refuse orders or commitments? The answer is deeply rooted in our emotions and standards of social behavior. Let's explore some of the main reasons why many people avoid saying no, even when that would be beneficial to them. The first obstacle is the fear of displeasing others. From an early age, we are conditioned to value social harmony and avoid conflict. This mindset can lead us to prioritize the needs of others about our own, even if it means sacrificing our mental health or compromising our goals. Imagine a common scenario. You get an invitation to a social event over the weekend, but already have important personal plans. However, when thinking about the possibility of disappointing the host, he decides to accept even unintentionally. This kind of situation is not uncommon, and it reflects how the fear of disappointing others can paralyze us. Another important factor is emotional guilt. We often feel that we are being selfish or insensitive by saying no. This sense of guilt can be especially strong in professional contexts, where there is implicit pressure to always be available and willing to help. For example, an employee who constantly accepts extra projects to impress his boss may be overwhelmed, compromising his productivity and overall well-being. However, this person may have difficulty recognizing that saying no is not a sign of weakness, but of emotional intelligence. In addition, there is the impact of social expectations. We live in a culture that often glorifies overwork and uninterrupted availability. This creates additional pressure to say yes to everything, regardless of personal cost. Result: we are trapped in emotional overload cycles, waste of valuable time and distancing from our true priorities. The consequences of these behaviors are clear. Mental exhaustion, lack of focus, and even resentment in relation to people who make constant requests. But the most worrying thing is that by saying yes indiscriminately, we miss opportunities to invest in ourselves and the things that really matter. The good news is that we can change this pattern when we learn to use philosophical tools like those taught by the ESE. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next lessons. Lesson 1. Know what is inside and outside your control. One of the most important bases of Stoic philosophy is the idea of distinguishing between what we can control and what is beyond our reach. This distinction, popularized by Epictet in its famous phrase, "Some subjects are under our control, while others are not," it is fundamental to learn to say no consciously and assertively. When we talk about refusing orders or appointments, we often feel paralyzed because we fear the reactions of others. However, this concern reflects a common mistake. We try to control something that does not depend on us, the opinions, feelings, or behaviors of others. Instead, we should concentrate our energy on what we really can influence, our choices, priorities, and attitudes. Imagine a hypothetical situation. You get an invitation to participate in an extra project at work. At first, it seems interesting, but by analyzing your current load of responsibilities, you realize that accepting this new challenge could harm your other tasks. In this case, what can you control? Your final decision on whether or not to accept the project. What is out of your control? How your colleague or boss will react to your refusal. By recognizing this difference, you gain mental clarity and freedom to make the best decision for yourself. This approach also applies to social situations. For example, imagine that a friend insists that you participate in an event, but you know you will need time alone to rest and recharge. Saying no in this circumstance does not mean that you are being rude or selfish. It means that you are honoring your own needs and limits. And as we know, taking care of yourself is essential to maintaining healthy relationships in the long run. To practice this lesson in everyday life, I propose a simple exercise. Reflect on a recent situation where you said yes by external pressure. Ask yourself, what could I have controlled in this situation, and what was out of my control? This kind of reflection helps to strengthen your discernment and make decisions more aligned with your values. By internalizing this lesson, you will begin to see that saying no is not a matter of confrontation, but of self-knowledge and self-respect. And this, in turn, will make room for more freedom and inner peace. Lesson 2. Avoid voluntary slavery. A Stoic philosophy also warns us about the dangers of voluntary slavery, a condition in which we sacrifice our emotional and mental freedom by constantly seeking the approval of others or avoiding momentary discomfort. Seneca, one of the great exponents of Stoa, expressed this idea powerfully by saying, "Do not change your freedom for temporary comfort." This phrase summarizes exactly what happens when we say yes repeatedly without considering the real consequences of these choices. Imagine someone who accepts social invitations only to avoid feeling excluded or lonely. Although participating in events can provide some immediate pleasure, this person may end up feeling overwhelmed, tired, and distant from their true priorities. The same goes for professionals who work overtime indefinitely in an attempt to impress colleagues or superiors. In the short term, this may seem an effective strategy, but in the long run, it results in physical and mental exhaustion. The concept of voluntary slavery teaches us that we are often willing to give up our personal autonomy in exchange for surface benefits. This is because we have difficulty to tolerate the passing discomfort that may arise by saying no. For example, refusing an extra project at work can lead to a brief sense of anxiety or guilt. However, by making this conscious choice, you avoid prolonged suffering caused by overload and chronic stress. To illustrate better, consider the following scenario. You are invited to dinner with friends, but already have significant plans for that day, such as spending time with your family or taking care of yourself after intense weeks of work. Saying no may seem difficult at the moment, especially if there is afraid to hurt your friends. But by choosing to preserve your time and energy, you strengthen your ability to live according to your deepest values. This approach does not mean that we should avoid all responsibilities or commitments. It simply means that we must learn to balance our external demands with our internal needs. The practice of Stoic wisdom helps us recognize that by saying no to things that do not add value to our lives, we create room for more significant and enriching experiences. Therefore, by adopting this perspective, we begin to see that each time we say no, we are actually saying yes to something more important, our emotional freedom, our well-being, and our authenticity. Lesson 3. Distinguish the necessary superfluous. If Stoic philosophy teaches us something, it is less often means more. The idea of minimalism does not only apply to material consumption, but also to the management of our time, energy, and attention. When we learn to distinguish between necessary and the superfluous, we gain clarity about what really deserves our yes and what must be refused without hesitation. Think of your daily or weekly agenda. How many of these activities are aligned with their real priorities? We often fill our days with appointments that seem important at the moment, but actually consume our energy without bringing any significant value to our lives. These superfluous commitments can range from unnecessary meetings at work to social invitations that add nothing to our happiness or well-being. The first step in differentiating the necessary from the superfluous is to take a break and reflect on what really matters to you. This may include professional goals, significant relationships, mental and physical health, creative hobbies, or anything else that is aligned with your personal values. Once you are clear about these priorities, it will be easier to identify the requests that should be refused. A practical technique to implement this lesson is to create a list of the 3 main priorities of the week. Explicitly write them and evaluate each new commitment or request based on this list. Ask yourself, does this contribute directly to my priorities? If the answer is negative, you will be easier to say no without guilt or hesitation. For example, imagine that you have a priority to devote more time to your physical health. During the week, someone suggests an unexpected happy hour at the end of work. Although it may seem socially interesting, you know this would compromise your gym hours, something fundamental to your well-being. By recognizing this dissonance, it is easier to refuse the invitation in an assertive manner and focus on what really matters. Moreover, this distinction between the necessary and the superfluous helps to combat the fear of missing out or fear of losing something important. When we are clear about what is worthwhile, we set aside the constant anxiety of wanting to participate in everything. Instead, we cultivate a mentality of gratitude for the free time we have to invest in ourselves. By practicing this minimalist approach, you not only optimizes your time, but also improves your quality of life. Each conscious decision strengthens its ability to say no to distractions and yes to what really matters. Now that we explore the philosophical and reflective basis of the art of saying no, the time has come to put these principles into practice. The next 4 lessons offer specific strategies that you can use immediately to refuse orders or appointments in an assertive and respectful manner. Let's dive into each of them. Lesson 4. Use assertive answers. Say no need not be rude or aggressive. In fact, it is possible to refuse requests educated and empathically. The key here is to develop simple and clear sentences that convey their position without leaving margin to misunderstandings. Some suggestions include, "Thanks for the opportunity, but I need to focus on other priorities now. Unfortunately, I can't commit to it right now. I would love to help, but my schedule doesn't allow it." These answers are direct, but also show appreciation for the invitation or request. It is important to highlight that you do not need to justify your decisions excessively. The shorter and more objective your answer, the lower the chance to generate conflicts or misunderstandings. Practice these phrases before challenging situations to gain confidence. Over time, they will become natural and an integral part of their communicative repertoire. Lesson 5. Accept the temporary discomfort. One of the greatest barriers to saying no is the fear of emotional discomfort that can arise in doing so. You may fear negative reactions of those who made the request or feel guilty for not being available. However, it is important to remember that this discomfort is temporary and often exaggerated in our mind. Stoics teach us that facing small discomfort is a small price to pay for long-term emotional freedom. When you say no with something that does not align with your values, it avoids prolonged suffering caused by overload or unnecessary appointments. Therefore, learn to tolerate this initial discomfort as part of the personal growth process. If you feel anxiety about refusing something, remember that this feeling will pass quickly, while the positive consequences of your decision will remain. Lesson 6. Cultivate gratitude for free time. Another powerful strategy is to cultivate gratitude for the free time you earn by saying no. Many people associate refusal to loss or sacrifices when they actually create room for more significant and enriching experiences. Instead of seeing free time as idle, start seeing it as a valuable opportunity to invest in yourself. For example, by refusing unnecessary social commitment, you can use this time to practice self-care, read an inspiring book, or simply relax. These activities contribute directly to their mental and emotional well-being, strengthening their ability to deal with future challenges. Develop the habit of recording times when free time has brought concrete benefits to your life. This will help consolidate this positive perspective. Lesson 7. Transform no into opportunities. Finally, face each no as an opportunity to focus on what really matters. Instead of thinking about the things you are refusing, focus on the possibilities that are opening before you. Each time you say no to something superfluous, it creates space to say yes to something more aligned with your values and goals. Imagine that you decide to refuse an extra project at work because you already have many responsibilities. Instead of focusing on what you are losing, see this decision as a chance to devote more time to your family, hobbies, or even rest. This transformative mindset completely changes the way we perceive our choices. By adopting this perspective, you begin to see the act of saying no not as a limitation, but as a way to a more balanced and authentic life. We have reached the end of this journey of self-discovery and empowerment, where we explore how Stoic principles can help us say no consciously and assertively. Throughout this video, we have discussed 7 fundamental lessons that not only change our perspective on refusals, but also turn the way we live our lives. We start understanding why saying no is so difficult, either by the fear of displeasing others or the emotional guilt that often accompanies this decision. Then we plunged into the philosophical foundations of Stoic, learning to distinguish between what we can control and what is beyond our reach, thus avoiding voluntary slavery and cultivating gratitude for free time. The practical strategies we share, such as using assertive answers, accepting temporary discomfort, and turning no opportunities, have provided concrete tools to apply these principles in everyday life. Together, these lessons create a solid foundation for you to make decisions more aligned with your values and priorities. Now it's time to put it all into practice. I ask you to choose a specific situation today you need to say no. It can be small, such as refusing an unnecessary social invitation, or something bigger, such as denying an extra project at work. Regardless of the context, practice the techniques discussed here and note how it changes your perspective. Remember, taking care of yourself first is not selfishness. It is wisdom. When you learn to say no in a balanced way, it makes room to invest in what really matters: your mental health, significant relationships, and personal goals. I end with a reflection. True strength is not pleasing everyone, but to be faithful to oneself. May every no you say from now on is a statement of emotional freedom and authenticity.